everybody. Welcome to Breaking Bread with Alie and Gabby. I'm Gabby Loren.
And I'm Alie Valerio.
And today we're featuring Nissim Black in our Success series because this series is highlighting different people amongst the Jewish community who have had different experience to overcome adversity and to attain success both in their personal life and professional life. And we are honored to have him, right, Alie?
Amen. So Nissim Baruch Black is an American Israeli rapper originally hailing from Seattle, Washington, who became Orthodox later on in life. So we're going to talk a little bit about your journey to that, how you grew up, and basically how you went from being in Seattle to becoming Orthodox to creating all of this amazing hip hop and music that's inspiring people around the world. I saw one of your videos the other day too. It has like 4 million hits on it. So we're super excited to have you. Welcome to Breaking Bread. So Nissim, can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and like how did you grow up in Seattle and then how did you come to Judaism?
We'll see if we can get that all done within under an hour. Now I grew up in Seattle, as you mentioned. I was born on the musical side. Both my mother and my father were both hip hop artists. They're both rappers, and along with that, I was exposed to normal things that kids growing up in the inner city, urban communities were exposed to. A lot of drug violence, a lot of gang violence. I was exposed to it at a very early age. By the time I was 9, I was already smoking pot. By the time I was 12, I was already starting to deal on my own and running with gangs, that whole thing, getting kicked out of school. And it wasn't until I started at a hip hop program that was a faith-based program, a Christian program, that really helped me a lot in terms of starting to see things, I guess, more from a spiritual aspect and more, I was a part of a center, so it sort of became like a safe haven. So that would be somewhat of the beginning of opening light, I guess I would say, the opening light to spirituality and growing. My first exposure was, of course, to Islam as a kid, but that was really, my grandfather was a Muslim, so he would take me to mosque. I prayed with him 5 times a day. And I held on to the title as a Muslim, but I was far from living, I'm sure, the lifestyle that anybody that is Muslim would say, claim me to be one of theirs. So, I would say I was a Muslim because of my grandfather, but I wasn't really, I guess, practicing as much, apart from just saying that I was. So when I had that encounter, I was maybe 14 years old by the time this happened. It was very good for me. And, we're going into high school, very involved still in music and also in high school football. And I sort of had this pull between, do I want to really go play football? Do I want to do music as much? And it was maybe in my 11th grade year where a demo of mine made it to the desk of an A&R Virgin Records, started having conversations. Those conversations led to me making music that was sort of going along with the status quo, more gangster. I started cursing, started sort of sliding back into my old lifestyle. And with that led to, getting into altercations with other artists that put me in a situation that led to I would say, kill or be killed situation. And that beef actually, with God's help, got put behind us. And after that, I really started searching, like, on my own. There was nobody there, no grandfather, no community around. So I wanted to start searching on my own, and I had a really good handle on the Bible. And so what I did, I started learning, and I got a Bible, Quran, Christian Bible, and I started going through all these different texts, like 8 hours a day. And then Judaism just was shining forth to me. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood also too, so I guess that was somewhat of a point of reference. So
can I ask you a question?
Yeah, for sure.
You grew up in an area of Washington that wasn't the best, obviously. There was like gang violence and drug dealing and all that. But you had Jewish people in your neighborhood. Were you in like a better part of Washington when this was going on?
No. This is all in the same neighborhood. It's very interesting. I don't know what the statistics are today, but I know at least at the time that I was living there, 98118, which is the zip code, was the most diverse zip code in all the United States. So you had one block up, you had the Jewish community, which is right next to the Asian community, African American. It's like everybody was like, near each other. So down closer to, Rainer Avenue where we were, that was obviously a more rough place. You didn't see too many of the Jews. They would go They would drive all the way around and go across the bridge to Mercer Island for everything, for shopping or whatever. They didn't deal with that side of the shit. It was almost like they weren't there. But, Saturday, everybody's out walking to shul. So, no, it's very, very close. Very interesting how that worked out.
Do you feel like everybody respected each other, being that it was one of the most diverse places in the United States?
Yeah, for sure. I always say, it was a beautiful thing for me that I was able to convert actually in Seattle, because it's a place all about, like, more so welcoming different people, different backgrounds. You know what I'm saying? I sort of say always the hashpah of the place and what the people are like in the place also usually affects the Jewish communities also too. So yeah, it was definitely more diverse and accepting of different backgrounds for sure.
So
Yeah, and
what
it probably helped you too to be around people of all different backgrounds, because it makes you more of an open person, in my opinion. I feel like just when you get out, when you travel, when you grow up with people of different backgrounds, you're more accepting and understanding of where people come from.
yeah.
No,
What
I would say for sure. I would say, like, even in high school, my high school was predominantly African American. There were definitely also too a lot of Eastern Islanders, Samoans and a little bit of Hawaiians and Tongans, but really mostly Samoan. But I always felt like a chesron and a lack, and I always told myself, nothing against the institutions themselves, but I was like, man, I'm not going to no black college if I go to college. I want to be around everybody. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to have the most diverse, because I felt like I was starving from being able to be in a place like that. When you go to school every day and it's just like everybody's like it, it's like it's weird, because I go back home and it's, you know what I mean? It's like I could go up the street and be in a completely different world, like you know what I'm saying, 2 minutes. So even though, like I would say, it was like diverse, everybody was accepting, but people still kind of stayed in their own bubble a little bit. You know what I mean? Like up the hill in where the Jewish community lived was nothing like down the hill. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't no beef or anything like that. Everybody was very accepting, but it was not the same neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? I mean, literally just minutes apart.
So you said you were getting to a level in your career because you were going into mainstream hip hop, right? And you were rapping
Right.
and cursing, and then you got to a point where it was like kill or be killed. And then you kind of found the Bible, and then you found the Torah. But why did you convert to Judaism? Because that's a huge process.
Right. No, it was just one of those things when your heart turns on, there's a fire that happens, you know, like I was going through the text and I'd always understood it in a certain way. I understood it that like all these verses here are talking about, the church is a big replacement theology, and that, all these things are really about the church. So first time I really started studying on my own, I started looking like, no, he's talking about Israel. He's talking about the Jews. And I said, well, that's not fair. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's this? And one of the biggest things about it is that, you know, my discovery is because think about just like my life, what I told you just a little bit, like I was just so used to messing up, you know what I mean? Getting kicked out of school and being all that, things that started off really, really good, but I was messing up. And when I started reading the Bible, the thing that I connected to the most was like, it's just a book about a bunch of mess ups, bunch of screw ups. David and Melik's a screw up, the nation's a screw up. Yeah. And there's this love that God has, and no matter what you do, I'll never leave you. So I think that was the most beautiful thing, and it was attractive to me. Like even if you read, even inside the prophets, and it's like the worst thing, he's gonna bring the worst thing ever that happened, and then at the end, by the end of the prophecy, it's like, but I'm gonna restore you, and again, I'm gonna return my love to you, and I'll bring back all the captivity. I was just like, wow, you know what I mean? There's nothing that anybody could do wrong. So I sort of fell in love with that story and wanted to be a part of it.
Did you ever have someone help you interpret the Torah? Because I know I have Torah at home, and when I look at it, sometimes my mind is like, what are they trying to say in these stories? And you kind of need somebody to break it down for you, and also to connect the spiritual ideas behind these stories, because they're not just stories at face value. There's
Right.
deeper meaning to them. So are you just smart and connected and were able to do this on your own, or did you have somebody guiding you through the process?
No, I would say like this, there are deeper things, and there's different levels of understanding Torah. I would say obviously now I can understand things at a way greater level, but there is something um there's a I would say a greatness or a beautiful thing to be able to understand things in the simple interpretation also, right? So for me, also, one of the things I did like this, I said like this, I got so confused about all these different things. I'm learning these different religions or whatever. I closed all the books. I grabbed the Tanakh. I think it was a JPS. It was in English. So that was easy for me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to read this. I prayed. I said, only to learn your character. I want to know what you love, what you hate, what you desire, that's all I'm looking for. So when I was reading, I was more so looking at the cause and effect, basically on the relationship aspect. You understand what I'm saying? It was sort of like, when two people are dating, it's like one level to just be in the infatuation stage. You know what I mean? And just sort of like everything you do is so great. And I was like, no, let me actually learn you. So I felt like I had to sort of like start over with God, because what I knew before, I didn't know now. You know what I'm saying? I'm learning something new. So that was the way that I took the Tanakh, and that was my relation. I wasn't trying to understand the nuances of every story or whatever. I was just looking at what was his reaction. What were the things that made him happy? What were the things that made him sad? And that's what the way that I approached it. And I feel like because I did it like that with simplicity, it turned on something inside of my heart.
Did you ever feel connected to the oppression of Judaism and how people in, Jewish society and Jewish communities have always kind of been oppressed? They were oppressed by Egyptians, current day, Holocaust. And then also coming from the African American community, having oppression in America. Did you feel like an identity connection there?
You know why I would say I did? Because, like I said, the overall story, like I was saying about the whole idea of like being a mess up and whatever and being taken back. But you're right. It was sort of like, looking at these things, it was very, very hard not to see the resemblance, what I'm saying, in terms of history. Obviously, you're dealing with on a volume scale, probably a whole lot more in terms of the continued stories, the continual people who rose up to try to, annihilate, you know what I'm saying, the Jewish people. So I definitely felt like that was that underdog type of feeling, did come along with it, that I felt that there was a connection there for sure. And even more so after the fact.
So while you were reading Torah, you just started to connect to the text, and then you decided to convert. And then how did you get into writing music that was related to Jewish thought?
So I think that, music really, the more and more I've come to understand it, it's really a tool, more than it is just an item of itself. You understand? Like for instance, you look at it even inside Tanakh. When King Saul was having, feeling melancholy, was depressed or whatever, they said, let him bring in a musician, and that musician was King David. You see, Elisha, the prophet, who was the student of Elijah, who lost his prophecy, and in order for him to get it back, he needed music. And the prophets, it was a known thing that the prophets, in order to rise to a level of prophecy, they needed music. So I start to see music more so as a tool. And what really happens is that whatever is going on inside the person generally gets funneled out through that tool, through that vessel. And so which is the same word in Hebrew, kli, tool, vessel, whatever. So that it sort of became just like a tool for me to be able to express those things, and wherever I was at in life, those things started to become expressed in my music.
Wow, it's kind of interesting how you made the connection between the word vessel and tool. So you're saying that that's the same word in Hebrew?
So a kli could be a vessel, it could be a tool.
But
So
isn't it funny because our bodies are also vessels and we use our bodies to elevate our soul through this physical world, and that's a
right,
tool to elevate your soul. So I
right,
I always love Hebrew word connections because it's so crazy to me how relevant they are when you're trying to understand connections, especially spiritual ones, concepts. And it just
right,
blows my mind. Like, who thought of that? Like, who thought to
right,
connect those two together?
right. Now, for sure,
Hashem.
divinely inspired. For sure, divinely inspired. For sure.
Yeah. And so, growing up in Washington and going through this process of coming to God and learning Torah, do you feel like there was one specific moment that you went through, like one experience that really triggered this search for your connection to the divine?
Yeah, it would happen to be that honestly, I was always a very deep thinker. Even as a kid, my mother would always say, like, you're too deep for me, like type of thing. And I was always very interested in the unknown. I was interested in God even as a kid, very, very young. And I don't know why. I always felt like there was this knowing. So there's a few different things. One thing happened. I remember I was in high school, my 10th grade year, and I remember walking in, coming during the lunch period. I walked into the hallway, and I think I ate off campus, whatever. I was coming in, and I had some food with me, and something just happened to me all of a sudden. It was out of nowhere that I start to have this crazy like trip out. Now, mind you, I wasn't doing any drugs by then. I'd stopped by the time I think maybe I was 13, I'd stopped smoking already and all that. So
I was gonna
this was just like
ask.
a nah, this is a complete trip out on its own, completely spiritually inspired. And I was looking around just like at all my friends, all my boys, and I was just like, wow, I don't belong here. Something is telling me right now that I know something that nobody else knows, and I don't know what it was. But I felt so out of place. Like it was just like a moment where I felt like, you know, what's going on? You know what I mean? And I always say I ate a chicken nugget and the whole thing went away. You know what I mean? But at least at the time, it was so powerful that I felt God was trying to communicate something to me. So I even got more involved in Christianity and more after that. And so I would say the next time that something like that had really hit me was when I got into the altercation. I got an altercation with another rapper, and ended up turning into a fight, actually a brawl outside a nightclub. We had left. The guys that were with me, and then shortly after, I got a call that the police were looking for me because they said I was shooting. Complete fabrication of the story. But I later on found out that a friend of mine did go up there trying to kill the other person, so he missed, and he ended up going to prison. But they thought that I was the one that sent them, so they were gonna come look for me. So it was either now, if I don't go take him, he's gonna come take me. And that was a moment for me where I really started praying and realizing, like for myself, like, you know, this is not the type of life I want to live. And it was eventually, it took some time. It wasn't like immediate, but it was eventually that praying and that crying out after we were able to put that behind us. We got on the phone and talked it out like men, which was a miracle in of itself. But after that, I was able to really sit there and reflect and say, wow, you know, this ain't what I wanted to live. This is never who I wanted to be. And so I ended up praying like every day. And that's what led to me questioning. And that's what led to me buying all the books. And that's, here we are, almost what, 10, 11 years later.
It's interesting. We actually just had Gedalia Fenster too on our podcast. I don't know if you know him.
So, of course.
He's like the Jewish Tony Robbins, right? And
Yeah.
he was a gambling addict, and he says that we change based on inspiration or desperation. So it's like in those moments of time where you kind of break, and then God's like either appears and inspires you to change, or you just continue on this path. So
Right.
now your music, I'm obsessed with your music. You're such
Oh,
a
thank you.
hip hop artist, like back when hip hop used to be poetry. So like, how do you
Right.
rate your music? Like, what do you want to do with it? Because it's very inspiring. There's Orthodox and non-Orthodox people that listen to it. Like, where do you see it going?
I really felt led and commissioned, from God to really just spread the music out. And to be honest, I just recently there was a article that came out in more of the religious Jewish community, where I was able to speak on it for the first time. Because it's just a lot of fear when it comes into like taking that step out, you know what I mean? Which is very interesting because think about it. I'm a guy who went against my whole entire grain and way of being in order to come to Judaism. You know what I mean? It was years and years I didn't talk to my family or nobody, not so much as like really like, oh, I gotta get away from you, but it was much more so I'm running towards this so much that, you know what I mean? And I'm chasing this relationship I have with God so much that I don't even have time, you know what I mean? So which thank God I've been able to be in touch with them. It's been a beautiful experience to be able to be in relationship with the family. But I started to sort of feel that there was a major need for even just more positive Black men, you know what I'm saying, to be making music. And I started thinking about, like, I have something that maybe not every other Jewish singer or talent has, especially inside the religious world, to be able to affect people. So would I just be sort of wrong, like, by not using that and only, worrying about, the small popular, and I can affect so many more people, and give light and give love and make people laugh, and to be able to spread something that's probably not going on in music and entertainment today. And even my acting talents, I've always wanted to do a little bit more. So um it was a struggle for me, really, to try to bridge these two worlds. And I went to my rabbi, and he was just like, this is what you're supposed to be doing, this is what you were born to do, like, don't no, he said, the whole world. And the most beautiful part about it is that because I'm doing this, have this opportunity to do it, I'm doing it as a Jew. We have no pressure to convert anybody, because we don't believe everybody has to convert to order to be a Jew. So me spreading light and love isn't converting people. So it makes it easier, because I don't feel like any pressure to try to change somebody. So that's the most beautiful thing. So I think that, you know, this opportunity now, what I've been really wanting to do is just sort of like spread some light, spread some love. So much negativity going on, not just in the music, but it's just really a lot going out, and it's raising the children. And there's a very interesting thing that the Rambam says. Rambam's rabbi wrote it maybe in 1100s, was maybe the foundation of Jewish law. That one of the things he wrote was that in order, when we talk about the word teshuvah, or returning to God, or repentance, he says that what that looks like in actuality is that a person has to be put back in the same exact place that they were before, right? And only this time not commit the sin, not to create the that's what tshuva is. You got to go back. So when I start to think about this, just very recent discovery, or even while I was in the hospital, that where I made, the defective things I was putting out, that God knows who did what to the music that I was putting out before. I have to go back to the same place. That wasn't at the yeshivas and at the day schools. I was back out into the world. So my cleanup work has to be out there. So that's sort of what I want to do, is sort of like, the same time as spreading light and love, it gives me opportunity to go and correct some things that I may have done wrong the first time I had a run.
Did it ever scare you to pursue music and your, path in Judaism, knowing that there's not very many, African American, Israeli, Jewish rappers out there doing what you're doing?
Yeah, but I think the biggest fear that I have is the fear of losing my religiosity, right? And once I got past that point, it was the next fear was like, oh, what are people going to think about me? You know what I'm saying? Not just so much in the world as much. That came later. That was the next fear. It's like what we call takufas. It's like periods of fear you go through. First thing is like, oh, I may lose myself, so maybe I don't want to get involved. Once you break that fear, the next thing is like, what are all the rabbis going to say? What are people going to think? What is the religious community going to say? Okay, once you break that, and then you got to think about, what's the world going to say? Nobody likes Jews, and the black people, they're gonna think I'm a traitor. These ones are gonna think I'm a traitor. It's like you get round past these different levels and levels and levels of self-doubt and self-fear. But I started to think about, and I was going through even like emails, different things I was going through, and how many people that can be liberated from it. Even in the religious communities, people are scared to be themselves. They have kishronos, talents, different things that they can that Hashem gave them to enter the world. People that were Bali Troop, they were not religious before, and then after, then they become religious, and then they shut themselves down to the world. And it's like, hold on, I gave you all these things for a reason. And I feel like it's to some degree, sort of a way of liberation, get rid of fear, and to go, to go weiter, as we say, go forward.
Do you find that these fear-oriented narratives that you were telling yourself with your inner dialogue to be actual truth that you experienced in reality, or do you find them to be illusionary and you were able to overcome it because you realize, hey, this is just my mind, this is my ego, and I can move past this?
I think it was a little bit of both, right? So as you're trying to overcome the fear, I would like to say, like, the other side, the Satan, the evil inclination, whatever the dark forces, whatever you want to call it, you know, likes to play on the mind of the person. We have it even ourselves. Like after that happens, then somebody does really come and they slam you. I tell you, like real story that's happened to me over the last years that I've been struggling, like almost like depressed struggling with this. Like really, I've never really talked about it till recently. Like I was so fearful about it. And I'm talking about I went out praying to God. I'm being honest with you. 17, 15 hours straight because I was so scared. You know what I mean? At the night at the Arizal grave in Sfas, nobody's there, and the graveyard all night by myself crying because I was so. I'm telling you, I was really in a very serious you know, situation personally. But the thing about it, I guess what it was for me is I started to see, like, you know, as I started to talk and go out more and more, this was the thing that really happened. I would constantly have these situations where I would have a run in with somebody that either didn't like me or not really me, but they didn't like my music and they thought I was this and that and that. And that's somebody very, whatever, religious, very, very, very ultra religious, whatever. And then I'm telling you, almost, I mean, less than an hour, okay, after this, and most of the time it was in minutes, there'll be a person or people that come up to me and tell me how much my music has done for them. It was like almost automatic. It was like divine providence that after I got slammed, I got even more people telling me how much. It was like, you know what I mean? So I did have this back and forth, like, and it wasn't all just in my head. Some people actually did. It wasn't a lot, but it was happening. So, you know, being able to go through that, it was sort of like I had that pick me up right afterwards. You know what I mean? So, um,
In the
but you know,
secular
it's a struggle.
world, that is considered a miracle. Like having these small
Right.
miracles, a shift in perception, because you're having these experiences where, you know, you have that fearful inner dialogue, but your outer experience is showing you, hey, it's not all this fear. Like there is
Right.
beauty out there. So I love that story. I think that's so powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to experience.
What kind of daily routines do you do, Nissim, in order to stay connected, that keep you driven and hungry to continue to produce more music and moving forward?
Well, I guess the main the main thing is that prayer, you know, like not just going through the siddur and everybody, you know, has the daily prayers at the prayer book and different things like that. But since I'm Breslov, and even before I was Breslov, it was very interesting. I would cry and talk to God in my own words all the time. So once I seen that, you know, Rabbi Nachman's teachings, at least that talked about this, like to spend an hour a day, that turned me on to a fire. So that's what I do. Like my room, actually, which you guys see, is actually like my home shul also. So I have everything in here. Usually the candles are lit, you know, and I try to keep myself connected in that way. A lot of meditation, a lot
Wow,
more
it
than
sounds like that room is for all of your music, the things you're passionate about, your prayer, God, everything. It's
right,
all combined into
right.
this one room.
All in this one room, all in this one room. So you can only imagine how hard it is to get my wife to pull me out of this room. So it's very, very tough.
It's
But
your version of
anyway,
a
so
man cave.
exactly. This is my version of a man cave. No TVs, no beers, but lots of coffee and a lot of support and a lot of prayer. So that's really the main thing. Like I mentioned also too, I spend a lot of time going out into nature also and doing meditation over there. Like that's my main thing. Is like I feel like there's always just like a need for me to be plugged in. Especially when you gain a certain level of celebrity, you don't always get time to yourself. You know, when anytime I go out into the streets, I always say, man, I'm public property. So people ask me like, oh, is it okay if I take a picture? It's like, well, I kind of signed up, you know, to sort of be harassed on some level. So, you know, I look like saying no. So it's almost like you don't really have that time. So in order for me to be able to give, I have to be in a state where I'm constantly receiving. So I would say between that and my learning, I try to get up early every day and learn. I have a learning partner. So these are things that really get me going. My kids are like my energy. Like these guys are. Like I was saying, we started a little late because of my kids. So my kids, definitely keep me going throughout the night, you know. And I think it's very good to have a good friend also too. My best friend and my wife are definitely somebody, well, they also whatever. But being able to have a very good friend and to be able to have a wife that's gonna like tell you the real, because if everybody else is telling you like yes, You need some people around you that's going to tell you, like, I don't know about that one, you know. So I think those are the things that sort of keep me going.
So you have 6 kids, you have a wife, you live in Israel right now. You know, you left
Right.
the United States, you're living in the holy place, city and everything.
Right.
How has your life changed since then? You know, what are the benefits you've seen from committing to a Jewish life and living in Israel and having a family? And what does your family think about where you are today?
It's a very good question. There's a lot of benefits to it. I mean, especially for me coming from where I came from and how I grew up. And I think that was one of the biggest things for me also too, as I learned more about Judaism, was just, the idea of just like Shabbos, like sitting at a table with family, like rest from the rest of the world. Like that to me was already enough. But then to, I can't remember the first place I was at. I think I had neighbors that were in Seattle, the Greens family. It was the Greens family. They lived right across the street from us on Myrtle Street. And, first time I had that cholent, I was just like, yeah, this is the life, guys. You know what I
That's
mean?
amazing.
Shout out to Julie and Joey Green. That was some good cholent right there. That was life-changing cholent. So, there was beautiful things and community and family, amount of love. Like we were able to see chesed unlike, anything I've ever experienced before. You know what I mean? Unless it's something that's built in and ingrained into, the community, then a lot of times it's just not there, so that was the most beautiful thing for me. And then being able to give that over to my kids. So my kids, they like, I mean, they don't live anything like when I grew up. You know what I'm saying? They don't know half the things, or a quarter or 10%, of the things that I knew growing up, and seeing the things that I seen growing up. And no offense to my parents, they did the best that they could with the resources and whatever was given to them. But I was able to take it to the next level. And now them all seeing what I've been able to do, they've been nothing but elated, excited, happy, supportive. In the beginning, it wasn't like that, obviously, because everything was new. And there was obviously a lot of years and time of distance that made people feel uncomfortable, especially when you come from a very tight family. But after them observing and watching and seeing what it's done, when you're consistent with who you are, then you start to see the effect that it has on your family also. So it's been a very amazing experience.
Has it inspired any of your family members to make changes in their life?
For sure, for sure. I believe so. It's been said to me also too. But I've definitely been able to see it on my own. Even I would say my father, who at one point, he was a rapper, but he was a drug dealer, pretty serious one. Like he had houses, you know what I mean? He had a whole operation, different things going on. And, one thing led to another. Him and my mother actually split when I was 2, and my mother remarried, and I had a stepfather who I don't. The term is even bad to say because he's my dad. He raised me since I was 2 years old, so I don't refer to him as step. But I have a dad and I have a father, and neither one were out of my life. So I've had 2 fathers. But but my father, he made a crazy change. Today, that same person is now theologian. He's a professor at a Christian college. He's a pastor. He's the head of the addiction program. So being able to see his change, I think, really affected me in an indirect way. Being able to know that was possible for somebody to really change a life like that. So, and I think that I've only reciprocated and given that over to whoever else was there to watch me go through my change.
So inspiring, especially as a young African American man too, especially what's going on in the world too, with so many people feeling like they don't have an option. So they just fall into like gangs and like violence and doing things on the street. But there is an opportunity to grow from this and to learn.
Right.
What advice would you give to someone who's young, who's kind of lost, who's trying to like change their lives?
I would say the biggest thing is environment, is that it's really hard to change when you are coming back to the same places, being around the same people. I always tell young people, even my sister, it's like, get out of Seattle. Seattle's a beautiful place. But once you've grown up in it and you're familiar with everything and you know where all the wrong places to be are, and you naturally understand you gravitate to the wrong places, you're going to have to go find some greener pasture somewhere else, to be able to get yourself, a little bit more elevated. And not to say you can never go back, but, sometimes environment, or even if you're going to be in the same place, you got to get away, go move somewhere. And I think that was the biggest thing for me, was like willing to sacrifice it all. Before, like, even when I said I hadn't seen or talked to my family in years, I was not far out of the neighborhood still before I moved to Israel. You understand what I'm saying? When that had taken place. But and just thank God, a lot of people are doing much better than what they were doing, when I was growing up and when I initially had made that decision, which is a beautiful thing. But at that time, I knew it was just like, I can't allow my kids to grow up in the same thing. And then I had to move and go get myself together, because one of the biggest things is that you will never notice if you're ever being the real you, or you'll never know if you're being the you that you want to be, as long as you're restricting yourself to an environment that already has your person picked out for you. Like case in point, I remember as I was starting to change and I was starting to grow, my cousin and, two of my cousins, and maybe my sister, who's also doing better now. She would never say this to me. They were just like, man, you're supposed to be out here in these streets getting it. Like, what are you doing? You're squaring up, whatever. Like that, they already got me picked out for who I was supposed to be. You know what I mean? And as I was growing and elevating myself as a person, like, I'm starting to see that book can be written completely differently than the way they have it. So I think that environment's a huge thing. And it's not necessarily that people are bad that are in that environment. It's just that if everybody's stuck, you know what I'm saying, somebody's got to go get out, you know what I mean, to be able to show everybody you could do something different, you know what I mean? So I think that was a very, very important piece.
To rewrite your story. That's such an important point, because I think so many
Right.
times we grow up, we think we're supposed to be something, especially Jewish people, right? You're a doctor or a lawyer,
Right.
real estate, and then sometimes you want to be an artist or you want to do something else, but it's never too late to write the story. I love that.
Yeah.
You know
And
what? I want to say on that point really quickly, because that's very, very important. I years ago, I will always praise the situation just because my environment's different, right? But now that I've grown and I've been a part of the Jewish community also too for so long time, then I see it's just the same type of handicap. I was at a retreat with all high school boys, and inside this group, I was with my Rebbe, who was actually the Rebbe for all these students. But even outside of school, he was my Rebbe. But he was talking to all of them, and he started talking to them about their future. What do you want to be? What are you going to do after school? What career path, whatever. And I was thinking back then, I was just like, wow, I'm in here with all the basketball team. This one just said he'll probably be a doctor. This one said he'll probably be a lawyer. This one says he'll probably go into the family business, real estate, whatever. And I was so impressed back then, because this is the whole basketball team. And nobody said they're going to the NBA. I know from my hood, even the guy who didn't make the team thinks he's going to the NBA. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he's not even thinking outside of that at all. So back then I was impressed, but now that that you bring that up, and years after, I was able to look and say that's just the same handicap. They also think that that's all they can be, right? Because that's all that they see that their father's doing. So they're not even allowing their ability to be who they are to be able to be expanded, and the shama to expand, into who it's going to be. It's the same type of handicap, but just on a different side. So I'm just happy you brought that up.
a lot of
100%.
people say you are a product of your environment, but I think what we're
Right.
saying today is you don't have to be.
Right.
Very
Right.
different.
For sure. Very, for
Um,
sure. For sure.
Nissim, I do want to ask you, you've overcome all this adversity in your life, growing up in a place that may not have been, the best, have the best resources. There's violence, right outside your doorstep or down the street. And today you
Right.
have a family, you have 6 kids, a wife, and you live in Israel. And you recently overcame another hurdle,
Right.
COVID-19 in 2020. So
Right.
I want to ask you, did you ever think that you'd be experiencing that this year? And how have you been able to overcome COVID? And what has it taught you spiritually?
I think COVID itself was like just a crazy thing anyway, because like, I don't know if anybody else felt like this that caught it, but it was just sort of like, for me, it was like this thing, like jump from TV and the news into my body. You know what I'm saying? It was like always something that was like, okay, it's really out there. And then when you catch it, it's just sort of like, oh man, I got that. It was like almost it jumped off the screen onto you. And I say that, seriously, even for me, I just be very honest, since I've been, really living this life and really dedicated to it. I haven't watched the news. I'm saying period for nothing. So it's very easy for me to not have, strong political opinions. I haven't watched the news in like 8 to 10 years. I haven't, like, literally. I'm not for the weather, not for nothing. I'm talking about none until COVID-19. Just one second. Yes, I don't have one in here. Okay, thank you. Hello. This girl knocking like she the police. I don't know if you guys
So
heard her.
funny.
Is that your wife?
No, that was my daughter. She's like,
Oh.
bang, 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 bang. If I can hear it through these, like, mute everything. So if I can hear it like loud through this, I'm like, just waiting to see who came in my house. Anyway, so for me who hadn't seen it, the moment I started watching, trying to figure out what's going on, it just shut down everything. Shut down all my concerts. Shut down. It definitely needs to be paid attention to. But I started to feel like there's a crazy amount of like fear that was coming through, that I started to get scared. I was like, feeling the panic of the situation. And one of the things that helped me to know is like how important good news is, to hear good news. You know what I'm saying? Any fishing for any type of good news that there is. And it sort of put me in a place where I like, you know, by the time I had caught it, I didn't know what to think. You know what I'm saying? One of the things about the virus is there's up and downs. Like, one day you could be slammed, and the next day you think you're over it, and then it comes back at midnight. So I was definitely experiencing that. Went to the hospital, was feeling crazy, pressure all over my body. Each person gets hit differently. But when that pressure later on had moved into my lungs and my respiratory area, that's when I went back to the hospital. And it was scary for me because I have asthma, and so I was very, worried. But at some point I got there and I really felt like, whoa, you know what I mean? I never felt like this before. In addition to the pressure and everything else or whatever, and not being able to breathe, that was just like, you know what I mean? Needing oxygen. I haven't been, I've never been hospitalized before. I've never even had the flu, thank God. You understand what I'm saying? So I didn't even know what to feel. So
Wow.
I got very, very nervous, very scared. In Israel, they're doing a really good job. I don't know what it's like. I've heard horror stories in other places, but I know for sure here, the staff was so upbeat and positive, um, that it was really encouraging. Another thing that did it for me was my brother-in-law, Yosef Brown, who, shout out to Yosef, he's my producer, 120 Music. He makes all my beats for the most part. He called me and gave me so much strength and like encouragement, that I realized that this whole battle had to be won in my mind. You understand what I mean? Like, because at one point I didn't think I was gonna go home. You know what I mean? Like, I was really having some difficulty breathing, and you know what I mean. And the first couple guys I was talking to, they looked nervous also. So I was like, oh man, that doesn't help. And like I said, it comes back to good news. Like, I was in the hospital, people calling to tell me that, did you know so and so died? Did you know so and so died? This one died. And I was just like, it can't be all right now. Not right now. You know what I mean? Like, everybody, I cut off my phone, no social media, no nothing. I just couldn't take any bad news. And I felt like getting myself in a place of simcha, happiness, joy, and whatever. And I had one meeting with a physical therapist that was trying to help me with my breathing to get my lungs back, whatever. And when she told me those exercises at the time, I was just like, man, that's a lot. And I started thinking about it. Like, if it's all on that, I'm up, And I got up. I was walking back and forth in the corona ward. I was beat, tired, whatever. And I pushed myself. And that's one of the things also, too. If you sit with this virus and allow yourself to just chill out and not to move and not to, do the exercise, stuff like that, it will be harder for you to overcome. So those were things that helped me, just staying upbeat.
Wow.
And
And you
having,
mentioned your mind too. I mean, that gave me chills when you said that your mind is what helped you overcome this virus.
for sure, For sure, because that's the thing. Like people, some people I've seen, they were like there for 2 weeks, and on the outside looking in, they didn't even look like they were that bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I asked someone, I was like, "איך אתה מרגיש? How do you feel? Whatever. How you feeling?" And he just like, "לא טוב." And I'm just like, man, well, you look great. You know what I mean? And I can't say, because I not him, and I have my own up and downs, the virus, but I feel like a lot of people get into a place where they're just like, you know, they like, ah, I got corona. You know what I mean? It's like after I got some encouragement, and I seen some, and just feeding off the energy of some of the people that were there. I'm talking about nurses, doctors. They were in there high-fiving people. Of course, they were dressed like they were going to the moon in a few minutes. But whatever the case, it was a inspiring and lively environment that made me feel like, man, listen, they got energy. They're okay. They're going home. I'm going home too. And I felt like that was one of the most powerful things that helped me overcome the virus.
I
What do you
love that.
think the message was from Hashem for you?
I think the message from Hashem at this was, I spoke about it recently also to another interview, was that, one of the biggest things was that I struggled a lot with this, like I told you about the music and going out, and I was back and forth. Even as much as I was starting to really break out, I already did Motherland Bounce, other than this, but it's still like this is there. I experienced things when I was sitting in that bed, like between me and Hashem, and just the amount of prayers. You think I was praying before I went to the hospital? You should have seen me at the hospital, right? That I felt like, okay, it's game over, and I told Hashem, if I'm out, everybody, the whole world's gonna know about your light. You know what I mean? And so I felt like it was sort of thing for me, was to give me a green light. It's one of those things for me. I felt like it was the period on it, just like, go, don't look back. I got you. But I needed to be able to slow down and really feel out my situation, and to know that, you know what, because one of the things that happens when you feel like that, or you get to a near death experience or whatever, or anything like that, is that you start thinking about what was important. What was I spending my time on? You know what I'm saying? If it was all the end right now, what did I just do with my life? Is it really that important? And I remember when the first post I made after that, like even on Twitter, and I was just talking about the politics or whatever, like people have to really evaluate those things. You die tomorrow. Some people, it's like that's for them, that's everything. So that's cool. But for me, it's not. You know what I'm saying? Like all these chaos and this and all this, it's like I'm going to be caring about how did I treat people? You know what I'm saying? What are people going to say on me at my funeral? You know what I mean? Was I the best father I could be to my kids? And I started thinking about all these important things and really evaluating myself, that it was just sort of like, I don't have time to waste here anymore. You know what I mean? And whatever I feel that my mission is, I got to go do that and live it to the fullest, to where that, when it's all said and done, I say that I gave it my everything. So I think that those were the things that really, like, I felt like Hashem was saying to me, from this experience.
Wow, Nissim. I mean, this has been so inspiring. I think that you're such an amazing role model for so many people around the world. So we're glad that you're still here. As we wrap up, we just kind of want to know, maybe what are some words of wisdom or some pieces of Torah that you like to absorb every day, or something that's really like struck you that keeps you moving forward?
I think one of the biggest Torahs was that I had learned from Rabbi Nachman in a book called Meshivas Nefesh, which in English they have a version called Restore My Soul. It's very, very good. Uh, I actually did my video win was sort of based off of this, but it talks about when a person is ready to enter into the gates of holiness, basically where there's this place where you enter into a place of spiritual rest and sublime light, and sort of restoration from your souls, because you're going level from level to level. When you get to this, when you're ready to enter into the next level, there's always the forces of the other side that rally up to push you away. And that if a person, if is not really really steadfast, Reb Nachman talks a lot about being stubborn. You know what I mean? Being stubborn. Okay, so what? I messed up. Okay, whatever. But God, I need you today, just like I needed you yesterday. I needed you while I was messing up, and I'll need you tomorrow. So because of that, I need to be stubborn. I need to be completely be stubborn when it comes to serving you. And if a person's not stubborn and they allow, a lot of things we're talking about, fears, doubts, you know, all these things to stop you, then they will definitely block you from achieving what you want. And then when things are the hardest in your life, when you're feeling the worst amount of pressure, and you feel lower than what you've been, and you're struggling with even all your internal things, your own character traits, whatever it is, things that are inside and outside, at that point, you know that that's when on the next side of it is the end goal. You understand what I mean? Like, you could determine the greatness of what you're about to achieve based on all the pressure and everything that you're feeling at the time right now. That means that because I feel the lowest I can be, that means that potentially I could be higher than what I ever did before if I switch the way that I look at this. You understand? And if I'm steadfast enough to be stubborn enough to be able to enter into the gates. So it's a very, very awesome Torah that comes from, I think, originally from Lakutei Maran, Torah 25, but in Restore My Soul. It's a very, very beautiful piece there.
It's like Kabbalah, the explosion of the vessel.
Yeah.
And, you know, just like in Jewish teachings and what you're saying, you have the power with free will to make choices in your life to be better, to walk away from fear, just to have a switch in perspective and a new perception of things. That's your choice. Although there is still divine providence that can work and be, what is the word, synonymous with it, like it side by side. You know?
Yeah. Synergistic.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I would say like this, you know, even if God knows what I'm going to do with my free will, I still don't. So I still got to make a decision. You understand what I mean? It's me I got to worry about. I don't know what I'm going to do in the next 5 minutes, you know? So, yeah.
100% Nissim. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Your neshama is so strong and powerful. The vibrations are just exploding through our screens right now, and I'm sure through our ears when, you know, the people that are listening. And I'm so grateful that you took the time to do this and share part of your life with us. And for anybody listening who needs to be inspired right now to maybe have a little more faith in their life or make better decisions, to come to God and have a more fulfilled lifestyle. So Nissim, where can people catch up with you regularly, follow your music after they've listened to this episode?
Oh, amazing. Nissim Black, even if you Google it, you'll find everything. Instagram, Nissim Official, like official, like a referee, whatever. Somebody ought to use that bar. But official, Nissim Official, you'll find also on Twitter, NissimOfficial.com. And they give you the links to everything. Nissim World on YouTube, Spotify, we're there, Apple Music. Trying to be everywhere that we possibly can be.
And Nissim was officially on our Breaking Bread with Alie and Gabby podcast. So thank you so much again. Appreciate it. Please subscribe, you guys.
Thank you guys so much.
Give us a thumbs up and comment if you're loving everything Nissim said or what stood out to you the most. We'll see you guys next time for Breaking Bread with Alie and Gabby. Bye, guys.
Okay. Love your two favorite Jewish girls and Nissim Black.
Have a good one.